This week, Governor DeSantis traded barbs with the White House over why the state has had so many difficulties with vaccine distribution.
We're getting about 266,000 first doses a week. We clearly have the capacity to do much, much more than that. And so what I've said from the federal government's perspective, I think the only thing they need to be focusing on is increasing the supply of these doses for our seniors.
I will note, because we're data first here, facts first here, they've only distributed about 50% of the vaccines that they have been given in Florida. So clearly they have a good deal of the vaccine. That supply will need to continue to increase as they are able to effectively reach people across the state.
So Matt Dixon is a senior reporter at Politico Florida and has been covering the state's vaccination rollout. And Matt, welcome back to Florida this week. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot of finger pointing. A lot of people are wondering why, when they try to sign up for an appointment for the vaccine, the websites crash or they can't get an appointment soon because that day's numbers have already filled up. What's your take on whether or not does Florida have enough vaccines, and is the federal government doing what it should to supply us with enough vaccines?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there as far as finger pointing being the theme of the week. And this has sort of been a theme change from Governor DeSantis. He's a noted Trump supporter, and he got along very well with the federal government and the White House for a long time. But this vaccine rollout has really marked his first fight with President Biden. And basically what he said there is there's 266,000 first dose vaccines. And as I'm sure most of your viewers know, you need 2 of them. And the federal government has increased a little bit. By next week, the last number I had seen, the state is going to be getting just over 300,000 first vaccinations. So whether that's enough or not is kind of a subjective or moving target. Governor DeSantis says the number could double. The federal government is sending more first doses starting next week. But there has been, as you talked about, there's been a lot more demand than there has been supply getting to these vaccination sites. And it's hard to get an appointment, and folks are struggling that across the state. I don't think there's any regional pocket that isn't seeing some impact there.
There's been some pushback, too, because in many counties, Publix grocery stores have been given the exclusive right to distribute the vaccine, to be the place to get vaccinated. And there's been some pushback on that. Talk about the controversy.
It was part of Governor DeSantis' push to move things, vaccine distribution, I guess, in more county, at the county level. It was hospitals to start with. Hospitals were getting the initial flow of vaccinations, and now it's going to CVS and Walgreens, and most notably, it's gotten a lot of attention, Publix, the grocery store giant. So the pushback has been to a degree from Democrats who have said, or even lawmakers who represent rural areas of the state that don't have Publix. Just today, there have been some communicating saying, hey, we have thousands of residents, constituents, voters, Florida residents who are 30, 40 minutes away from the nearest Publix. Is this really the best way to handle our vaccine infrastructure and how to boost it? So that's kind of, and then there was the woman who leads the Florida Hospital Association, the big statewide trade group that represents state hospitals, a week or so ago had talked about how Publix and some of the private sector vaccine locations like CVS and Walgreens getting in the game has hurt supply going to hospitals. So there's also that issue they're trying to balance with do we send this to a healthcare setting like a hospital, or do we use it in Walgreens, CVS, Publix, which the governor has sort of said that's more in communities and might be easier to get to.
So, Matt, you also covered the proposal by the governor for the new budget that begins July 1st. And the governor, as you put it, has a pretty rosy view of the next year's budget. How important is federal money to the governor's rosy picture for next year's budget?
Yeah, the federal ballgame is sort of the federal money is the ballgame right now. The Florida's budget, as the governor would like to see it, be $96 billion. Next year, that's about $4 billion in this year's budget. And you would think in a pandemic when the state is looking for revenue, that might not be the case. But the federal government and coronavirus stimulus money has really bolstered things. There's a ton of federal money going to the Medicaid system, which has gotten many more enrollees because as the unemployment rate spiked during 2020, a lot of folks became eligible for that program. There's also a lot of federal money for the state education system as they try to figure out how to best fund that in a year where we're going into where state officials don't even really know where the enrollment numbers are going to be because so many folks have been doing virtual learning. So there's that whole element as well of we're going to be entering a year where enrollment numbers are themselves, just how many kids are going to school is going to be tough to pin down.
Matt Dixon, thanks for coming on Florida This Week. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks, guys.